Welcome to the AA Podcast, our little corner of the web where we are not afraid to discuss tough questions like,
when did nutrition, health, movement, and stress management become alternative medicine?
Where we embrace challenges in all aspects of life to become healthier and stronger versions of ourselves.
And where food and movement are the best kinds of medicine, and cooking meals at home is a revolutionary act. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the AA Podcast. This is Ashley Olson.
And I'm Andrea Crane.
We are going to power through this episode.
Yes.
Andrea is dealing with a nasty cold. So thankfully, this episode, I actually get to do most of the talking.
I know. This is the danger of peds and primary care. All those little snot-nosed buggers come in.
I know. Well, it's like every mom and dad with a new kid in the daycare system. They're constantly sick.
Betcha.
So
You
all the
betcha.
germs.
Yes.
But we are going to start off this episode, as always, with our weekly Bible verse, and mine is coming from 1 Chronicles 16:23, and it simply says, "Sing to the Lord, all the earth. Tell of his salvation from day to day."
And mine, I'm feeling very put upon today, so mine is Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. That's me. And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Amen. I love it. Well, today, Andrea, we are going to begin a series about setting up your macros or setting up your diet for different phases of our health journey. So this first episode is going to be all about setting up your macros for whether you're wanting to do fat loss, lean muscle building, or even maintenance. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the maintenance because it sounds like, no, I don't want to be in maintenance. But there's a lot that can happen during maintenance that we'll talk about.
I feel like maintenance is the hardest phase.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, and people talk about the difficulty of weight loss, and I get that, but I feel like once people are rolling, like that is not nearly as hard as maintaining.
100%. I totally agree. And if you can master the maintenance phase, you basically have won. Like,
Yeah, you got it.
if you can do that strategically, that is where, like, that's the Goldilocks zone, basically.
Right, for sure.
So let's kind of lay out some beginning groundwork on what are macros, what are calories, why do they matter? And a lot of our listeners too might be thinking, well, I'm not going to be counting macros or calories, like, so this episode doesn't apply to me. I'm going to challenge you to keep listening, because I think if you were to take a little bit of time to really understand where your nutrients is coming from, you will be much more educated, and you'll realize why maybe you're not making the progress that you feel like you should, because you feel like you're in a caloric deficit, but the scale's not moving, the body's not changing. And then I'm going to also talk about how you can start learning from taking some time in learning what your, like, building a plate looks like. And we did do an episode on kind of building out your plate, I believe. I'll have to find that episode.
I
I
think
feel
that
like
was
it
early
wasn't.
last year.
Yeah. I'll have to find that episode and link it in the show notes. But kind of like how to set up what that might look like. But great, laying some groundwork. So calories. Calories are literally in every food. Every food has calories, every food has macros. And so we have our three main ones: protein, carbs, and fat. And if you haven't already, we talked about it in the meal prepping episodes, what that all looks like, and I gave a very simple freebie for you guys on how to set up like a simple meal plan, and also gave you the grocery list, the macro breakdowns, the caloric breakdowns. It's literally right in front of you.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a
it
great
is
tool.
it is a set amount, so 1700. It's just a caloric amount for the day, so that may or may not work for your current needs. But we're going to talk about how to adjust that as needed. So, 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So you can take those numbers and then figure out how to build out a caloric day. And I'm going to get kind of do that for you. Okay, so before you get started, make sure you're hitting. So we want to figure out, okay, if my goal is fat loss, which fat loss is different than weight loss. Um, so when you are just focusing on the number on the scale, that does not mean your body recomposition is changing. It just means you're maybe even dropping water weight. You might be dropping some body weight, but you could also be dropping muscle mass.
Mhm,
So the scale, ladies, is
mhm,
not the golden rule. And this is going to take a lot of brain retraining for some of us
mhm,
because it's been the metric for so long. And a lot of us, as I talk to clients, it's like, okay, we're we're retraining what our grandmother, what our aunts, what our mother even has
mhm,
taught us about looking good, or being skinny, or whatever that might look like in terms of verbiage from your childhood. And so the scale is only a metric. So, but we can use the scale as a nice consistent metric for getting to our maintenance calories. So, what are maintenance calories? Maintenance calories are simply what it says. You're not gaining or losing weight. You are simply maintaining. Now, we're going to get to why being in maintenance is actually a great thing in a little bit, but finding our maintenance calories currently will help us set up whether or not it's a good time to go into fat loss phase or go into a muscle building phase. So how do we
No, Ashley, I just wanna
yeah.
stop for just a second. So and I hope people are kinda getting the importance of this. It's when people decide that they are going to, I'm gonna lose weight, I'm gonna start tomorrow, I'm going to like, this is the I'm ready to go, and they get the motivation summoned for this,
Mhm.
okay? I please listen really carefully to what she's gonna go through about finding your maintenance calories because that means that you can't start tomorrow. That
Mhm.
means that you can't start right? Like, this journey is a little bit longer if you're gonna do it right. It's
Yes.
a little bit longer than you think. And so it's really, really important that, yes, get ready to start today,
Mhm.
but also get ready to find those maintenance calories, which may not look like much of a change for you immediately. But these are the kinds of like the work that you're going to do right now ensures longevity. So
100%.
I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. And thank you for pointing that out. But also, that does not mean by finding our maintenance and sticking to those calories that we're not actually going to start doing some work with those calories. We can
Yes,
restructure where those
absolutely.
calories are coming from, and you will see some progress, whether that is actual body recomposition, which we'll get to, or you may see some changes maybe in the strength department when you're working
Mhm.
out now. So, number one, we got to find our maintenance calories, which we're going to go through. And I would say hit those. I mean, ideally, we're hitting them at least for a week, but I would say ideally for at least a couple weeks. This accounts for weekends, which
Mhm.
are usually the detriment to everybody's diet is those calorie weekends. Um, so we're taking into account those because those do literally matter when we're coming up with how much we are truly consuming. Next is we're going to, once we find that maintenance calories, we're going to take a look at where those calories are coming from. How much protein? And you all know, if you have listened to any episode of ours, I think we hit protein every episode because it is so vital
Mm-hmm.
to health, longevity, and body recomposition. So we are going to get to a point where we are hitting at least 1 gram per pound of body weight. And if you are somebody that is overweight or obese, we will we'll basically take that and do your ideal body weight or your
Mm-hmm.
current lean body mass if you know it. And then once you've determined those two things, we're going to figure out, are we mentally and physically able to dedicate some serious time, whether that is in a cutting phase, a muscle building phase, or even a maintenance phase. So, calculations when we're wanting to lose body fat. Now, remember, I said body fat loss and weight loss are totally different. And remember, I said weight loss basically just takes into consideration maybe some water weight. We might be losing some body fat, and we also might be losing some muscle mass. Now, whenever we're in a caloric deficit, so a weight loss, fat loss phase, we want to make sure that we're maintaining as much muscle mass as possible. Now, ladies, I want you to think. You probably have some celebrity or maybe even an athlete that you follow on Instagram that you're like, that is what I want to look like. And most of the time, if you looked at that picture of that person, whether you want to admit it or not, probably has a lot more lean muscle mass
Mm-hmm.
than you think you need to look like that. And when we want to have that, how do you say it, svelte look, that
Mm-hmm.
toned look, it's actually more muscle mass than just fat loss. And so think about this. If you are new to weight loss or weightlifting, you more than likely do not have the muscle mass required to even
Mm-hmm.
achieve that look, even if we did a successful fat loss phase.
Right. Right,
So,
because the skin has to hang on something. So when you
right.
lose excuse me, sorry. When you lose the fat, I mean, the skin is literally just hanging on bone without
Yeah.
musculature. Yeah.
So you might be saying, yeah, well, I need to lose weight. I have to lose weight. Okay, I understand what you're saying. You want to look different than you want to be a smaller version. You want to fit into those clothes. But if you do not have the muscle mass, you're basically going to be a skinnier version of your current self. And you may be fine with that. But I probably 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, that is
Mhm.
actually, you're still not going to be happy. It's still going to be, I want to lose those extra 5 pounds. I just need another pant size down. And you're going to achieve that maybe, more than likely not, and you're still not going to be happy because at the end of the day, it's that lean muscle mass that you really
Mhm.
need to put on. So,
Yeah, it's the difference between, like, you've seen the celebrities who have, like, obviously done the Ozempic, right?
mhm.
There's something called Ozempic face,
Yep.
and nobody likes that. Nobody likes that, and you may not be able to put your finger on, "Gosh, they've lost a lot of weight, but why do I not like the way that they look?"
Mhm.
And that is precisely why. It's because the musculature is not there underneath to, literally hang the skin upon.
Yep.
So, they lose the fat, but they don't eat protein, they don't do resistance training, and so, you're just kinda left skin and bones.
Absolutely. Yep. So we want to figure out our maintenance phase, which we talked about sticking to what you are currently doing, which sounds so boring, and I know it is, but this is super important. Take ideally 2 weeks, 3 weeks would be amazing. where you track every single day your caloric intake. Um, and you can do this simply by using free tools like MyFitnessPal. That's one of the most popular, and honestly, their platform is just super easy to use. You
Yeah.
can, there's some tricks of the trade that I won't say on here, but you can freely scan your food barcode.
I'll say it. Say you're in
Okay.
Australia.
Or
Just or New
England.
Zealand. Oh, okay.
Or the
Yeah.
UK.
Yeah.
So in your settings, just say that you're in the UK, Australia, or New Zealand. Um, don't come after me and don't
I know,
change it.
right? I know.
um,
I tell people
and
that
you can
too.
freely scan your barcode. It's super easy to put in recipes that you popularly make at home. It's just a really great platform. But if there's another one that you've been using, you know, here and there, and it's easy for you, just stick to one, and start recording what you're eating. Now, people are probably thinking, I'm not going to do that, Andrea. I'm not going to do that, Ashley. And Andrea might be thinking this herself right now.
Oh, Ashley. Yeah, she's
um,
calling me
but
out. Yep, it's
but
true.
it really one, it really is eye opening to see what you're actually consuming.
Yeah,
But and it's going to be tempting if you do follow what I'm saying to start changing things, but I'm going to encourage you, do not change anything. Don't try to quote unquote clean up your diet. Don't do anything. Figure out where you are currently, because if what we want to do is, are we currently gaining weight? Are we maintaining weight? Or are we losing weight? And in order to figure that out, we have to figure out how many calories we're consuming on a daily basis. So, ideally, 2 to 3 weeks of figuring out what you're consuming. And then once we have that number, so say you're consuming, I don't know, you might be thinking you're consuming 1,400 calories, but in reality, once you figure on all those weekends and all the things, you're probably hitting closer maybe to 1,800 to 2,000 calories. And so you're like, whoa, I didn't realize I was eating that much or consuming that much. You may not be actually eating that much. You might be consuming that much, because remember, there are such things as empty calories from like beverages and things like that.
So,
Um,
Ashley, hang on a second. So, for the listeners that might be thinking, "Well, okay, what's wrong with 2,000 calories?" Because every time I turn a package around, it says average daily number of calories, 2,000. Like, I've heard that for years and years and years. So what's wrong with 2,000 calories a day? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Nothing is wrong. In fact, I love that 2,000 calorie,
But
but where your calories are coming from to get to those 2,000 is doing you a massive disservice to
and also
your
your
fitness goals.
yes, and also your metabolism. Like, not
Mhm.
not everybody is metabolically flexible enough to eat up to 2,000 calories, right?
Yep.
You could be eating 1,300 calories a day and not losing a thing because
Yes.
you've dieted for the last 6 years. So there's a lot in play here.
Absolutely. And thank you for mentioning that, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, my body just does better at like 1,200 calories. It just does better. And I was like, okay, it might quote unquote do better in the sense that you feel like you're losing weight from the scale, but you're still unhappy with your body composition, if you're being completely honest. And you might be still dealing with that lower belly fat that just won't go away. Your arms may still feel flabby. And going back to the point to what Andrea said, is like you might be losing that scale weight, but your skin has to hang on something.
Right. Yeah,
And if it doesn't have anything to hang on, you're still not going to like what you're getting, even though the scale is moving.
exactly.
So back to the point of 2,000 calories, I freaking love 2,000 calories. Anywhere between 2,000 and 2,200, I that is ideal for women to really thrive in. And you're probably freaking out right now by me saying that and being like, there's no way I can eat that much. But if you listen to the rest of this, so not all calories are created equal. And so if we actually restructure where those calories are coming from, we're actually going to be able to see that body recomposition that we're going to talk about.
Mhm.
Does that help?
Yep, totally.
Okay, perfect. So we've determined our maintenance calories. Say we're eating 1,400 calories. Andrea, I am not dieting anybody on 1,400 calories.
Right. Yeah, where are you gonna
Absolutely
cut?
not. Where are you going to cut? You're like, well, I can do that. Like, I'll just do a couple shakes and then I'll just do one meal a day.
Yeah.
Honey, it's not going to work. Like, you will lose probably some scale weight, but I will tell you right now, you're not going to be able to maintain that
Yeah.
long term. There's going to be an event that comes up. There's going to be a birthday party. We're coming into the holiday season. Something is going to come up where it spikes those calories, and then you're just going to go back into a dieting phase again, and then you're going to be miserable. You're going to hate life. So,
Yeah.
my biggest thing is like, let's figure out where we can truly thrive and you feel good, you have the energy, your sleep is good, and we're eating enough to build the body that you truly want and desire.
Yeah.
So, I am not I would never consider myself a diet coach. Like, I'm a lifestyle coach. And lifestyle encompasses where we can truly um, recomp our body and build that lean muscle mass and not only focus on the aesthetics part of health and wellness, but
Uh-huh.
also the actual internal longevity piece as well.
Yeah.
So, um, whenever we're in a fat loss phase, um, we're going to take those maintenance calories and whatever those are, you're going to take approximately 15 to 20% of that, subtract that, and you will be in a true caloric deficit. Obviously, any caloric deficit is anything less than maintenance.
Yeah.
But we don't want to stay in a fat loss phase forever.
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird, but we don't actually want to be in a dieting phase. Just to Andrea's point earlier, is one, it messes up our metabolic rate where our body is so smart and our body's only job is to survive. And so if we're constantly in a caloric deficit and always chasing those lower calories, that baseline is going to start just lowering and lowering down. And so if we can get to a point where we're strategically eating for our goals, we can slowly bring up that metabolic rate to be able to handle a little more calories. Do you feel like that was well
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's talk a little bit about like feeding people up. Maybe that's where we should start this. And let me just do a quick calculation for folks. Like, let's say that you do come out with 2,000 calories, right? So you just stick that in your calculator times 0.2, and that's going to give you 20%. So that's going to be 400 calories. So as Ashley's talking, you subtract the 400 calories from the 2,000, you get 1,600. That will throw you into a fat loss phase, right?
Yes.
And 1,600 calories is very doable as opposed to if you, let's say, you are only eating 1,400 calories a day, and then 20% of that is going to be 280, right? So now you're down to almost, oh my gosh, you're at like 1,100 calories a day, and you're not sustaining on that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, talk about because here's the deal, and I think, Ashley, we're talking to a population today. This particular episode is the first in a series, and we're talking to people today who don't have overt illness, who don't have chronic disease, who aren't in like the perimenopause or the menopausal wasteland. These are just, what, millennials in their 20s, 30s, early 40s who are not struggling with various chronic health conditions. Okay. So this is for your average normal person, which sadly is becoming less and less easy to find. But these women are going to be the ones who are most likely, and tell me if I'm wrong here because you have more experience here than I do, but these are more than likely the women who have been dieting for the last 12 years, right?
Hmm.
So you may not even start with a calorie cut. Ashley is probably going to feed you up, and that's going to drive you crazy, but you have to trust the process. Can you talk about that a little bit? And I think that gives people a better sense of how this whole thing works.
Yeah. So what Andrew's saying is like if you've been a chronic dieter for the last decade or more, your body is not at optimal operating at optimal operations basically.
Yeah,
Like
well, they're super efficient.
it's super efficient and we don't
Super,
want our body to be
right?
efficient.
No, we want it lavishly burning calories, just like,
Yes.
"Hey, I'm gonna get enough food, and so I'm just gonna burn calories all day long."
Yes. So it sounds good, oh, my body's super efficient with my calories. No, it's not. We want the body in a sense, and I'm almost kind of well, what Andrea just said, just constantly burning. We want it
Yeah,
to be a fat burning machine.
yeah,
And that means that it's not efficient, which sounds weird
right,
to say it
yeah,
out loud. But so building up. Now, most women, when they come to me, they're probably eating realistically um, between 1,800 calories.
okay,
That's probably a pretty solid average. Now, 15 to 1,800 calories, since we just talked about in a fat loss phase, we're cutting 15 to 20%. Like Andrea said, that's putting you down to significantly low calories that are not sustainable long term. And they're not
right,
even sustainable to a point where you're probably going to see fat loss. Like you might be able to stick to that for a couple weeks, and then you're either going to be a hangry, raging, you know
yeah,
what,
yeah,
or you're going to have, like I said earlier, events or holidays that come up and it's just going to throw you out of that fat loss phase. So
right,
instead of just running the hamster wheel and going crazy, let's figure out a more efficient way to do this. So building up. Now, if somebody comes to me with 15 to 1,800 calories, I'm seriously not going to necessarily change their caloric intake, but I am going to change where their calories are coming from. And so we might sit in that perfect maintenance phase for a little bit, and we're still technically building up because I'm going to start focusing on their protein intake.
yeah,
Most women come to me eating 40 to 60 grams of protein a day, if that.
yeah,
You will be shocked. And that is why I want you to start tracking to figure out where your calories are coming from, and how many calories you're eating, because you'll probably think, well, I really focus on protein. I do a great job. And then we start tracking it and it's like, oh, I only eat 60 grams a day.
that happens all the time,
It
all
is
the time.
absolutely, it's like you truly don't know because you haven't educated yourself. And that is completely normal. I don't want you guys thinking less of yourself, but but I also want you to realize like when you tell me you're eating enough protein, I know you're not.
Right, right.
I
Yeah,
tr-
the default is not enough.
It is always not enough. And if you've listened to our protein episodes, if you haven't, go back and listen to those either for the first time or again, because the research on protein, not only just for longevity, but just the fact that it is almost impossible to gain fat by eating excess protein, pure
Yeah.
protein,
Yeah.
is amazing. Like,
It is
it just brings a
amazing.
smile to my face because it's such a magic macro.
Yeah.
And there's so much that you can do with more protein. It's so good. So when I'm talking about feeding up, or at least getting restructuring your current calorie intake, we're taking what you're currently eating in terms of calories, but now restructuring it. So more calories are now going to be coming from pure protein. And this is where whether we so at first I'll always stick with the calories that you're currently eating, but restructure them. And then from there, depending on how many calories you truly are eating, and if you're able to be consistent with this with what we have in place, then from there, if you are only eating 15 to 1800 calories, I'm going to slowly start increasing those calories, whether that still needs to come from protein, or we need to come from other sources like fat and carbs to get you up to at least, a sustainable, maintainable 2000 ish calories. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, 2000 calories is the magic number. I'll just start eating that. Please don't.
Yeah.
Um, you're going to be mad at me because the scale's going to go skyrocketing. You don't have a strategy in how to get to 2000. You just start eating 2000, and you're not focusing on the right things. And primarily that's protein. And maybe you're not utilizing those calories efficiently for your workouts either. So,
Right, and
um,
this is where a calorie is not a calorie, right?
mhm,
And I know you've heard that for years, that a calorie is a calorie, you just need to be in a deficit, blah, blah, blah. That's not what the research is saying now.
yeah.
And we've known this for a very long time in the functional realm and in the nutrition realm, that a calorie is not a calorie. That's ridiculous, and I think it's just stupid on its face. But I'm a little grouchy today because I don't feel good. So, but I will say, like, and this is so Ashley's talking about, don't just jump up to 2000 calories and think, oh, well, my body will adapt and I'll get to that, metabolic maintenance phase at 2000 calories just by jumping up there. You won't. It's not
Mhm,
it Going up to 2000 calories is not super fun.
mm-mm,
You're going to have to eat things that, you know, probably you don't care to eat. You'll develop a taste for these things later on, but it is going to be extremely protein heavy. It's not just a free for all
yep.
with, oh, I have 2000 calories to play with. Um, that's not how any of this works. So that's why it's really important to work with somebody that knows what they're doing, like Ashley, that will bump you up slowly as your metabolism kicks in, right? So
Mhm.
she's going to monitor things like your hunger levels, your
Yes.
energy levels, all of those
Sleep,
things. Yeah,
digestion.
absolutely. Uh-huh.
Digestion's huge because,
Yeah.
um, as we increase protein, one, we don't wanna do it super fast, and we talk about that in our protein episodes. We might go up 5 to 10 grams a week at max, for a while
Yeah.
because your body digestion
Yeah.
needs time to adjust to those
Yeah.
extra protein, consumption.
It sure does.
So you're probably thinking, can we just kind of summarize all of this?
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling like that myself. But okay, so let's kind of break it down in the sense of we have determined our calorie maintenance. All right,
Okay.
say it's 15 to 1800.
Okay.
That's too low. We cannot do a calorie deficit from there. I won't do a calorie deficit from there. But what we can do from those calories, we can still consume the same amount of calories, but now we can really focus on the protein intake. So we're not just eating the same things that we used to
Yeah.
get to the calorie intake, like Andrea said. Now we're going to start focusing on our protein. So say you're eating 40 grams of protein a day. Start by just one meal, adding in a little bit extra protein. So say instead of having 2 eggs in the morning, now you're going to have 2 eggs plus a serving of egg whites. So that would be around 5-6 grams of protein.
Yeah, or
And
Canadian bacon
or
or,
Canadian bacon or some
some
type
type
of
of lean
protein.
protein. Yeah.
Yep. Um, Yogurt.
Yeah,
You could
perfect.
start adding in cottage cheese, whatever that might look like for you. And so just take one meal and start increasing that on a daily basis. If that feels good, your body's adjusting really well after a few days, maybe bump it up another 5 grams in either the same meal or another meal. Instead of having, uh, I think the serving size of lunch meat is 58 grams of lunch meat. Now bump that up to another half of a serving. So
Yeah,
58 plus 24,
29. So it's gonna be
29,
like
sorry.
80. It's gonna be like 90,
Yeah,
close to
so
90.
about 90 grams
Yeah.
of
Alright.
lunch meat. So just start slowly taking one meal and just slowly increasing um, the serving size of your lean protein. Once you get to a point where you're eating roughly your body weight, or at least your ideal body weight, or your lean muscle mass, if you know that body weight an amount. So if I have a 145-pound female, I would actually feed them up to 145 pounds or 145 grams of lean protein.
Mm. Yeah.
Ideally, because
Yeah.
what our goal is that we're building muscle, lean muscle, because we want a structure for our
Right.
skin to sit on
And
that
to get off the
looks
toilet.
to get off the toilet. Um, we want that structure and that muscle mass in order to look better. So this person has taken some time. They're eating the exact same calories, 15 to 1800, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Um, they've fed up and they're now eating their 1-to-1 ratio of protein to body weight.
Yeah.
And one, they're probably feeling better. They're feeling less tired. They're sleeping better. They feel like they have more energy. Things are going really well. Their biofeedback to me is looking really good.
Yeah.
I will start now because the protein is at the 1-to-1 ratio. I'll start saying, okay, let's add another 50 to 100 calories this week, and that those calories can come from fat or carbs because our protein is where it should be. Um, and how I do my lifestyle clients, and I've done this for a while, and I do this for myself, is when I first started in the with my fitness journey, I was given a certain amount of fat to hit and a certain amount of carbs to hit. And what I've found, especially for lifestyle clients, where we're trying to, you know, recomp the body, and let me just say, recomping. So when I talk body recomposition, it's literally taking your current physique, building more lean muscle mass, and changing the ratio of muscle and fat. So we want to increase the muscle mass and we want to decrease the fat mass. And if you can do that, and that's why we both agree that maintenance phase is like the Goldilocks zone because you can do body recomposition. But maintenance is the best place to do body
Yeah.
recomposition.
Yeah.
Um, and so if you can get to that point and start building up that lean muscle mass and decreasing your body fat, I will tell you, you will start loving the way that your body starts looking, even though the scale is not moving.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and so I lost my train of thought. If we can get your calories up a little bit more, because again, 15 to 1800 is not a dietable amount. If we can get you
Yeah.
more into that 2000 to 2200 range and be very consistent scale weight wise, but still really focusing on lean muscle mass building,
Yeah.
which ladies, if you're not resistance training, you're not building muscle. If
Yep.
you're and you're not building muscle if you're in a caloric deficit. You have to be in maintenance or a surplus to be able to build lean muscle mass.
Yeah.
Um, and so, um,
So
if we can,
you're laying a huge foundation for weight loss. It's not just I'm going to start Monday and cut my calories to the bone.
yep,
And so that's what I really wanted people to get a hold of, is that you got to have the musculature to support this. You've got to, like, this is the real way to do it.
hmm and earlier we said the more lean muscle mass that you have, the more energy it takes to maintain that, and therefore you're burning those fat
Yeah.
molecules. So therefore you're looking leaner even though the scale might not be changing. And that is why for my clients, I'm huge on progress pictures. I'm huge on other determinants of progress. So are we sleeping better? Do we have better energy? Are we hitting um, you know, hitting some new PRs in the gym? Are we practicing progressive overload, which that's a whole nother episode. Um, and are we just having better overall biofeedback improvements? So there's fat loss phase, there's maintenance phase, and then there is surplus phase. Surplus phase, you are going is it surplus phase is
The
for the
bulk.
person, yeah, for the person who maybe has been training for a while. They are kind of getting to the point where it's really, really hard for them to put on lean muscle mass. Um, and they just need that extra push with calories in order to get the body to build lean muscle mass. So I'm going to probably not get this completely accurate, and maybe Andrea, you have this in your head, but research has shown that there is such a thing as newbie gains.
Oh, yeah.
So newbie gains, God bless you if you are here, because you should be utilizing, you should be taking full advantage of this, is
Yeah.
where you haven't resistance trained really ever, and you now have a program that has true progressive overload, which we'll get to that in another episode, but you're practicing true progressive overload, and you are truly in an optimal position to build that lean muscle mass. And newbie gains, I think it's around, you can gain like, I don't know, I want to say 1 to 2 pounds of lean muscle mass over the course of 6 to 12 months. Does that
I think that's low. I think
okay?
that's low.
Two to
Yeah.
4 pounds?
Yeah, that probably sounds more right.
Because I think after
Yeah,
that, it's very hard for somebody outside of that newbie gains to gain 1 to 2
yeah.
pounds of lean muscle mass after that.
Yeah, and it depends on age, and it depends on,
Yeah, a
a
lot
lot
of
of things,
factors.
but yeah.
But if you can optimize that first 6 to 12 months of lifting by prioritizing your protein and your calorie intake, you're going to be able to optimize building the 2 to 4 pounds of lean muscle mass in that
Yeah,
first 6 to 12 months.
yeah,
And then from there, it's going to be basically an uphill battle of trying to put on lean muscle mass. And so, say we have somebody that's been training, for say 3 to 5 years, and they've kind of gotten to the point where they're just not putting on more lean muscle mass. They're kind of just maintaining where they're at. We might put them in a surplus because they just need that extra bump. Their body just needs that extra bump. And whenever you're in a surplus, and this is really for somebody that um, is mentally okay with putting
yeah,
on a little extra body fat to get to their ultimate goal of putting on lean muscle or
yeah,
lean muscle mass.
yeah,
So this isn't really something that I put many people in, because one, most of my clients are coming to me already not happy with their body fat
right,
percentage.
right,
So the last thing I want to do is put on more body fat.
right,
So this is kind of more for that, I want to say elite athlete that just really needs to bump it up. So I don't want to spend too much time in that surplus category just because it's not
Yeah.
typically something that I put a client in. But if you are somebody that's listening and you're like, I just don't know what to do, I'm practicing progressive overload. I don't feel like my lifts are getting stronger. I feel like my body composition is staying the same. You probably would benefit from a little bump in calories for a little while,
Yeah.
and sit there and really push the weights in the weight room and really prioritize protein. Now, something I want to talk about too is time in each of these zones. So, we've talked about not sitting in a fat loss phase forever, and your body just isn't meant to do that. So, what
Yeah.
is optimal fat loss phase? And that's really into, or, yeah, optimal time in a fat loss phase. And that's really up to the individual and where they are mentally and with being able to eat in a deficit. Because if somebody's coming to me and they're really struggling with reducing food, that is a telltale sign that they are not ready for a calorie deficit. If that is something that is scary to them. And so they would be somebody that I would probably sit in maintenance for a long time. And by a long time, that could be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. It could
Mhm.
be a couple of years. And it could be where they're really getting super comfortable eating up on their protein. And something that I will do too with somebody that has been in a successful maintenance phase is I'll actually feed their protein up even a little more. So for like myself, I'm now eating 1.2 grams of protein per body pound.
Which is huge.
Yeah. So I'm eating a significant more protein than I am by scale weight. And you're like, well, why are you doing that? And it's like, well, I'm wanting to optimize as much lean muscle mass and maintain as much lean muscle mass as possible, especially considering, data has shown after the age of 30, you're basically on an uphill battle of putting on lean muscle mass because you're losing it
Yeah.
at a much higher rate. And then every decade after that, especially starting at the age of 50, it declines so much more. So I'm 39. I want to optimize as keeping and building as much lean muscle mass as possible. So I'm eating more lean muscle or lean protein.
Yeah.
So that might be a strategy that I do with a client that is not physically or even mentally, mostly mentally ready for a true caloric deficit. And then if the person is ready for a caloric deficit, my ideal time frame, depending on the individual, is anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks.
Mm.
I really don't want to go too much farther than 12 weeks, and 12 weeks is really a long time. That's 3 months of caloric deficit. If you're a lifestyle client, that's taking away life because you will probably have kids events, you'll have birthdays, you'll have holidays, and I would definitely never recommend dieting over the holidays, which I think that should be another episode. But we want to make sure that this is still a sustainable way of living, and so you might be able to be a little bit more. You might be okay with missing one or two events with being able to hit your caloric deficit consistently, but I found that the longer you diet, the less adherent you are, and adherence and
Right.
consistency is going to be your best friend. And so I would rather do a shorter fat loss phase and then bump back up to maintenance, because every time we do that, our metabolic health is going to improve.
Mhm.
Our body's going to be much more of a machine than efficient. And like we said, we don't want to be efficient. We want to be a fat burning machine. And so I'll usually do 6 to 8 weeks max on a fat loss phase. And then maintenance, like I said earlier, it could be a couple months, it could be 6 months, a year, a couple years. Maintenance phase is, like we said, the Goldilocks zone. And then if you're in a surplus, like if you're that athlete that just really needs to bump up, that's going to just depend on your individual goals. It may be, and because the putting on lean muscle mass is so much harder, you're probably going to need to sit in a surplus for probably 6 months. I don't think you need to necessarily do it for a whole year, unless unless there's just some really, really specific goals that you have. But yeah, does that help kind of break things down?
Yeah, I feel like that's a good breakdown. Um,
So if you're listening and you're like, well, I definitely think I'm a chronic dieter, I'm not seeing the results. I guess I might need to try to figure out what I'm currently eating.
Yeah.
Focus on the protein first. Slowly build up that protein to 1 gram per body pound. Like we said, don't
or for ideal weight.
or ideal weight. Yep, and do it slowly, like we said. Take one meal at a time. Just slowly increase the lean protein from each meal until you get to that 1-to-1 ratio, and sit there for a little bit and see how your body adjusts and how it starts recomposition. Because there's also research, which is freaking exciting, that just by eating more protein, you can build muscle.
Which is crazy. It's like alchemy.
It is so amazing. So if
Yeah.
you haven't, by this point in our episodes, learned how much protein is a miracle macro, this one should
Yeah.
be like
Top of the list.
yeah, it's cherry on top. So start eating more protein. Your body will love it,
And
and
it will respond.
you will see the results. So if you have any questions on just like the calculations or anything, I actually made a post on fat loss on my Instagram page, but I'm happy to share that with you. I'll link it in the show notes
Mhm.
as well. But the biggest thing is figuring out your current macros, your maintenance phase, and then going from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Perfect.
so in the next episode, we're going to talk about macros or calories or setting up your diet for that dreaded zone of peri and postmenopause,
Ah.
which
Whew.
it is a
That's a whole thing.
it's a whole thing. So I hope that this episode was helpful and kind of helps lead into the next parts of our series.
Yeah, Ashley, I think that was a really, really good breakdown. And what it does is, I think people who began listening to the episode thought their starting point was here. But what you've told them is that, no, I think your starting point is over here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives people like the initial phase, like the pre-work, right? That they may not know that they needed to do. And so I feel like this was a really good episode for telling people exactly where to start and what to do first. And it's probably not what you were thinking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to take a lot of retraining of what we've been taught.
Right. Right.
And that
But
is a
that's why
lot of
nothing
work.
is working. That's why nothing is
Exactly.
working for people, because what we've
Yeah.
been taught is not right.
If you keep doing the same thing, getting the same
Yeah.
results, it's
Yeah.
literally insanity.
Yeah.
So it's time to change it up and try something new.
You betcha. Good job.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. And if you have questions or anything that you might need specific help on, please reach out to us either through our email or our Instagrams. Both of those informations are in our show notes, and we will see you next time.
Bye. The content
content provided in the AA podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The information and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical advice.